We'll be starting in just about 30 seconds. Hello to everyone. Welcome to everyone on our live stream as well. All right, thank you for your patience. Good morning and good evening to everyone around the world. Welcome to our expert webinar, The Secret to Building Great Products. And our speaker today is Srishti Sofat, who, sorry, didn't change the title on the title slide, but she is the VP with the Oracle DX Marketing Group. So let me move on, not mistake, to instructions on how to make the WebEx operation work for you. The Q&A button will give you the ability to put questions for Srishti into the Q&A box. We will collect those and I'll give those to her during the Q&A section of our presentation. You can use the chat function. We can catch a few questions there, but mostly we focus on the Q&A. So with that said, we'll also be doing several polls. I want to start with just one to warm you up. And this first poll has two parts. How much work experience do you have? And then how are you doing today? We've been asking the second part of the question all during the pandemic to let people, give us feedback on how they're holding up under lockdown and the various restrictions. And we'll close the poll in about 20 seconds, so you have a chance to get your answers in. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here are the poll results. So a very even distribution of experience levels. And it's good to see that nearly everybody is doing well or at least okay today. And we hope that what Srishti has to share will give you a brighter outlook. So with that, I'm going to introduce her. And so I said she is the Group Vice President of Oracle CX Marketing, regardless of what it said on the title slide. She is passionate about building and scaling world-class internet consumer and SAS enterprise software products. So her passion is for making products that people find intuitive and satisfying. She provides strategic, technical, and operational leadership to a global organization. Oracle is worldwide, of course. Her background is Bachelor in Engineering from NITK and MBA from University of Washington. We're very pleased to have her here today, and welcome, Srishti. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Glad to be back here and have this conversation. We'll just kick off another poll just to sort of, gear the conversation a little bit better. Looks like the experience was quite distributed. Let's see what's the role that all of you are involved in your organizations, or I guess some of you are students. But we'll get a sense of the audience and the group.
These roles are heavily skewed toward people involved in product development. We've got about 10 more seconds. And 3, 2, 1, and close the poll. So the greatest number, Srishti, are in the other category.
Might be miscellaneous, but there's about 17% product management as well.
Yeah, and over 10% executives. That's interesting.
Okay. Perfect. All right, so we are going to talk about building great products. That's the whole conversation around, and let's start with a slide, Stuart.
So,
all right. Okay. Oh, sorry, I forgot the order. Okay, so we have, so I guess just some context switching. I'm going to talk about what is the secret ingredient to build product, and I really talk about that, and I'll disclose it in the next slide. But let's do a quick poll around this. Do you want to do this poll then, Stuart?
Yes.
Yes. So let's do this poll. But what is the key challenge you face in product development as we looking at some of the problems? Let's get that sense as well, and then I'll kick off my conversation. This is the last input for you guys.
About 20 more seconds. All right. Just hit that submit button.
All right, so customer is quite at the center of it, and then there's an even distribution on delivery and stakeholder. All right, as expected. Thank you. Thanks, Stuart. All right, let's get started then. All right, so I think even before I get into what you're seeing on the slide, let me share a story. Back in early 2000, when I was doing my MBA, we were evaluating the music industry, and at the time, if you recall, what we all were doing was listening to CDs, and that was sort of the form. And it was a strategy paper, and we were like, what will disrupt the music industry? That was sort of the whole research around. And if you think about the music industry, there were some characters in the plot. They were the consumers, they were the music labels, they were the artists, and a lot of research was being done by us in the MBA. But then it came along iPod and iTunes, right? We just had a product which it felt sort of got that story right. Not only did it start as a portable music player, but it very quickly went into disrupting the industry by saying now you can buy a single song, right? Some of you are very young, and this is the way of life today. But sort of a major disruption took place. Now, that is something to keep in mind. Apple was very intentional in how they approached their product development. It's really that they took all the key participants, I'm calling them the plot of the characters, into account as they built this product. So they wanted to see whether the customers get what they want, which, the iPod started out being a portable player, but it very quickly got innovated into something where people could now purchase on the go. You didn't have to buy the album, but it's not like the artist felt that they were being left around or they supported it. The music labels also figured out how to generate revenue. So they completed the picture. And that is why iPod succeeded. And, we know the Apple story there. There have been a lot more successes, but it's been a story of looking at the complete picture, all the characters in the plot, continuous innovation, and sort of having that intentional approach. If you look at Zune, which many of you may not have heard of it because it failed quite quickly, it was a Me Too product right after the iPod, and it added no additional features or key value proposition to any of the important characters in the plot here, right, for the music industry. So it came and it went before you could blink. So that's just something to think about as we think about products which fail and succeed. What is that sauce? Let's go to the next slide. Sorry. So, I am going to focus a lot on this word called empathy. And I do believe that, thinking about the customers, thinking about the stakeholders, the market, all the characters in the plot, being able to actually think about something from their perspective is what I call empathy. And I feel that it is a key ingredient for success in the product. Now, it's not just about, I'm going to talk about sort of empathy in the product life cycle. To me, there are the customers, which are very important. And, as we discussed in the poll, there are the stakeholders who are very important. And it's very important to get your team aligned and hand in hand with you for the vision so that you can succeed. So we are going to talk about the product life cycle and how empathy plays a key role in each one of these areas for a successful product. Let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about the customers, right? I mean, this is sort of should be, if it is not the center of your starting point about building a product. Now, do we know our customers? Do we know what do they want? Are they looking for simplicity? Are they looking for ease of use? Are they looking for automation? Are they looking for intelligence? I mean, my last talk, quite frankly, that I gave in this platform was all around simplicity, automation, and that whole area with what are people looking for. Are people looking for performance? I mean, if you think about the whole iPhone, iPod example, definitely ease of use was sort of the driving factor. If you look at Google search as an example, performance is sort of the driving factor there because the sub-second results was what transformed the search industry, if you will, right? So you kind of have to figure out what you want, right? Today, I'm in enterprise software, and what we are looking at is today consumers are getting used to simplicity. And now the same consumer goes to work and uses enterprise software for their day-to-day work. What do you think they're looking for there? They also want this work process, though it's a complex workflow, they want to do it in an intuitive and simple way. So, that's where we bring in some of the automation and intelligence. So that's sort of a point of view around what is our customer looking? Are we kind of thinking about them? Are we, being in their shoes? Let's look at a different dimension, right? A non-functional dimension. What about accessibility, right? Who is your audience? Do you need to make sure that your product is accessible by people? Do you think that today privacy is a big concern, right? We've heard of products fail because, they are not taking user permission and sharing data. So are you keeping those non-functional perspectives of the customer in mind? Are you empathetic towards their needs about all of these areas, right? Security. I mean, if you're not only a financial institute, if you have PII today, security is very important. So, are you looking at all the aspects that your customer want? The other aspect really is around, we are building global products. Are your products truly global? Do they come in different languages? Are they supportive of different genders, race, language? However, right? So it's not about my customer is one persona, gone are the days, right? You sort of have to look at your customer very holistically, look at functional, non-functional, so truly think about where you want to take your product and who is that audience. And that's what we want to start with as we think about a product. Let's go to the next slide. So, I heard the statistic, right, that every 1 second delay in a page load on a mobile phone, adds to 20% drop in traffic for a mobile web page, right? So, nobody has the patience. The customers don't have the patience. The customers have too many choices today. So if we don't put the customers at the center and really have some framework in our organizations, if you will, for you know doing product development in a processified fashion, which is keeping customer at the center, it is a recipe for failure. So one of such a framework is called design thinking. We've been using it quite heavily. I've had some experience in it, both in terms of sort of, when we started the whole transformation journey for our products, where we were trying to rewrite them from sort of being complex products from an interface perspective and a user experience perspective, and try to hide some of the complexity with automation as well as intelligence, and behind the scenes do complex stuff. We looked at design thinking, which is really like a non-linear iterative framework where you sort of brainstorm in a cross-functional group. You start out with that. You meet your user groups. It's a 12-week course, which many universities offer. You can find a lot of material around it, but the main reason I'm bringing it up is you need to kind of have some approach to make sure that you are not getting siloed by a particular viewpoint of who the customer is, right? So you need to make sure that you challenge your assumptions. You really need to make sure you prototype. You actually take it to the customer. You test. You interview enough of your customers or your stakeholders. So it is a framework which sort of methodically tells you how you could put the customers at the center. So it's one of the many frameworks, but this is something that we've been exposed to, and it is something that I've been also leveraging sort of even as training within my team, whether people are sitting in the IC role, QA role, dev role, just to get that empathy to the customer in the organization sort of going. Right, so this is something that I definitely recommend to check out as one of the frameworks, or sort of think about it. Let's go. I do have a quick poll right after this, just to get a sense from you guys on where you all are today. Even if you haven't heard of the term design thinking, I'm hoping that some of you have looked at this approach of sort of empathizing with the customer, defining the problem, then ideating, doing revs, prototyping, testing. So, let me know which all of these methods do you use today in your organization, you feel, and feel free to put in chat what do you find successful.
And about 15 seconds left.
So it's great to know that a lot of these, at least, I don't know if, I've seen some chat that you're saying, what is it? It's not, I mean, definitely product managers can do it. But like I said, in my organization, I'm actually having people in all roles do this course, because it's really about, at any point, you always have a customer, whether you are actually treating your end customer, or if you are sort of, an engineering person, you kind of, your PM is your customer, or your account manager is your customer. So it's sort of a methodology which kind of makes you brings in the whole empathy and sort of understanding where your customer's coming from, what are their challenges in. So this is something that is one of the many frameworks that you can leverage to sort of culturally think about empathy and customer sort of at the center of your product development life cycle. Let's move to the next slide, please. So shifting gears quickly to the next important thing, and we spoke about not stakeholder support, as enough of you, 25% of you talked about that as well. So it's easy to we all talk about let's have an elevator pitch, right? And I think that it's gone are the days where it's the same elevator pitch, right? Again, what I'm trying to say is that whether you are an organization large or small, you do need the support of somebody to get your project going eventually, right? But who are you pitching to determines what you pitch. Again, share a story, right? When was it? Late 2000. It was the first time I was moving to India from the US, and I was going to be setting up India Dev Center for the company I was working for. And this was an idea. I was just fresh out of my MBA, and I thought, let me do this pitch. And interestingly, I realized, right, and learned as I did it, that what I need to talk about is based on who I'm talking to, right? So if I'm talking to the CTO and I'm pitching, in that scenario, I'm talking about the talent and the R&D, and how you can get top talent from the top schools, and talking about all of that data points about the top schools, the top talent, and focusing on that. If I'm talking to the CFO, I'm talking about possibly the cost savings, and what this can do to the bottom line, and how you can build a larger team maybe at a fraction of the cost, and how this is sort of a great model. If I'm talking to the sales head, I'm talking about how it's, in this case, the story was how India is such a large country, it's potentially a great market. And, as we do product development in the country, we can also go to market, right? So my point with this example, which is a pitch, right, is really about saying that the pitch is customized because you're putting on the shoes of the person you're talking to, right? So you're kind of empathizing with them and understanding. I mean, empathy is just really about being in their mindset, right? And then talking to them in their language that they understand. Because that's your ultimate goal. Your ultimate goal is to get the yay for whatever you're pitching, right? Whether it's a feature idea. I mean, it could be as small as I want a new button in this page and I'm trying to pitch for that, or as large as I'm, trying to get a big investment to build a whole new product in a whole new different country, whatever the case may be. But the point really is, can you customize that conversation based on who you are pitching to? And that's what needs you to be very consciously aware of being empathetic, and having that stream of, can I think like that person for a minute and then present, not because I have all this cool data, not because I want to say all of these things. I'll put it in my deck. This picture looks great, I'll put it in my deck. No, just step aside and pitch what you think will get you that yay. That's your goal. Know your audience, know your goal, and that's how you develop the pitch. So that's where the stakeholder comes and is a key ingredient in ultimately your product life cycle as well. Let's go to the next slide. This one. And then, we really need to talk about building the product. Let's say, you figured out your customers, you're clear about what you want to build, you've got the budget, you've got the go ahead, and people are saying, yes, go ahead, now build the product. Now, when you really have to build the product, how will you succeed, right? I mean, even in a product development lifecycle, we can talk about a tech product. Most of my experience is in that. You have different characters there, right? You have the PMs, you have the devs, you have the QA, you have the UX designers, you may have program management, project management. I mean, there is everything else there too. And if each person is just thinking from their perspective, you have a very, very dysfunctional team. Very quickly, you see delays in the project. You don't see, things getting delivered. And it's easy to figure out when you walk into a room and you know that there is a dysfunctional team here at work, right? If PMs are not able to negotiate and understand what it takes to build some feature, and are just stuck on feature and time and cannot negotiate on scope, you probably can't you can't move forward. If dev is just very focused on perfection maybe in some states and is not willing to do iteration to meet time to market, you may not be able to build a product. If QA KPIs happen to be just let me just file as many bugs as possible and that's my KPI because I'm not getting the whole picture, that's a problem. Now again, the industry has come up with frameworks such as Scrum and Agile which try to break all of this away, and they're telling you that, listen, we are a team, and team is about the individual, and let's work together as a team to ship, right? A potentially shippable product, iterative, potentially shippable product is what you need to deliver. But a framework will not work unless the constituents in the framework, as in the team, is working together closely and is empathetic towards each other, right? So that is another very important aspect. You know, I talk about Scrum as a framework. I can talk about DevSecOps as a framework, which is, again, you know, once you build a product, you need to ship it out. And, you know, there are all these paradigms now, which are making sure that we don't have walls between us, right? Whether it's, you know, between dev and ops, or whether it is between PM and QA with Scrum. But bottom line is that, you know, you need to build that culture, and it's important that you have that notion of looking out for each other, being in each other's shoe, and being able to think about the problem from another person's perspective, right? That is key to a good team setup. I know we've skipped ahead, but let's blow out that slide score. Yeah, this is the next slide. Right, and then, you know, to me, ultimately, nothing is a success unless you can sort of be in a continuous motion, right? I mean, a lot of us join organizations where there is an existing product. Many of us build new products and then want to make sure that, you know, it's not a one wonder. Ultimately, you know, you are enjoying your work every day. Everybody who's coming to work is enjoying their work every day. If everybody's feeling that, you know, we are being innovative and creating, especially if you're in the product development line, right? I mean, you want to be in that zone. And how can you be in that zone is the key question here, right? And I think that, you know, what we spoke about, especially around the customers, and having that customer centricity mindset across the organization is important. Having that empathy around, you know, being aligned around that vision to say, let's all deliver, this is important, is key to it. Ultimately, you want to be in a state where it's not a top-down approach, right? Not one person is coming up with how to make this product innovative, because development happens in little Scrum teams, with little pods. You know, everybody is building some portion of the cog of the wheel, and then the product comes together, especially when you're talking about an existing product and adding features. So you want to move towards a setup where you are setting up a culture which enables and empowers innovation at every level. And even that requires you to give that empowerment to the folks by really enabling, you know, that empathy, and, you know, giving them that, you know, we have team as a we culture, let's all be customer centric, and then you get the ideas and the ideation. So, you know, that's another key aspect around how you can then continue to innovate, right? I mean, innovation is like one of your key tenets there. Let's go to the next slide. Right. So ultimately, I would like to, you know, end by saying that empathy is central to product development lifecycle, whether it's customer, stakeholder, and team. I mean, I think about all the characters of the plot to get the story out. If any one of these things don't work, it will not happen. Now, are there other things important for product success? Definitely, yes. But if you do not have empathy in the picture, it is one of the reasons that it will fail, right? You can price it right. You can have the right feature set. If you can never get it out, what happens? If your budget just never gets approved, what happens? If you build the wrong product for the wrong customer, you did think about all the various aspects, what happens, right? So everything else, you know, comes from also empathy. I mean, even if I go back to my first example, right, of Apple, right? Why they started with the iPod as just a portable player, and how did they eventually get into let's price the music right, let's make it to go, is really because it started out from thinking about the customer and solved a lot of different problems, which is product, price, packaging, all of that came in. But it started at the center with the customer and being empathetic to them, right? So that is really what it is. Now, today, you know, we all know where we are. I mean, I recently bought an Apple Watch for my grandfather, right, for his 91st birthday, which is because now it has the ECG monitor and the oxygen and, you know, all of these things which, you know, people are measuring in the age of, I think with the pandemic even more. So they're, you know, they're keeping in touch with the customer. and they're adding features and functionalities, which is called the continuous innovation, right? You're looking at what's happening. You're looking at your customer's perspective, and you're like, okay, I think there are people who want to measure their oxygen level 5 times in a day. Can I now provide this in my device? So it is a model where you are continuously innovating, right? So, and you're able to deliver in time, right? I mean, if this product came out, 2 years later, now you can measure the oxygen. Maybe everybody's moved out, and we are not interested in measuring oxygen. So the fact that you're able to keep the customer in the center, you're able to deliver the product in time, really means that you got your customer and team right. And hopefully you've got the budget, your Apple in this example, but it doesn't matter. It depends on the product. So the key point here is that let's keep those key things in mind as you all take this journey. I think product development is a really, really large topic, and I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation with some of the questions to carry this. But hopefully, you guys will take this key takeaway, go back and think about some of your projects, either they are the successes or the failures, and look at it from this lens, as well as look at what you can do differently if you are in an existing project today, if there is conflict and delivery is not happening, or you're not getting the yes from your stakeholder, or customer adoption is for the feature is not really happening, then go back, do the homework, and think about, did you really get that perspective? That's my key message to you guys. I wish you all the success in all the product development you all are doing, and I'm hoping that some of this will help you in how you go through this life cycle and have that mindset going forward. Thanks. Happy to take the questions now, Stuart, and continue the conversation.
Very good. Let me pull up the questions because it generated a lot of interest.
Okay.
And I guess one first question is, Vicky, I'll ask if you could give maybe an example of design thinking. Walk us through
an example. Yeah. So like I said, right, I mean, I can give you an example of what we did in my team because that's the easiest for me to do. We were looking at, we had a user interface which we felt was very complex, and we felt that people probably needed to be a little bit more technical to create a campaign and do some messaging. And it was, we felt that it was sort of a little overwhelming from people who are used to using a Google or consumer products today, right? So we wanted to redesign the interface to make it very intuitive. So that was the problem statement. Let's make the interface of a marketer sending a campaign very intuitive. That was the problem statement. So what we ended up doing is, in this case, we called a lot of our campaign services folks and we interviewed them, right? So you actually interview them and you see how do you do this process? Do you pick the audience first? Do you pick the content first? Like, you understand how would they use the product, right? You talk to them, and then you look at your assumptions. You're like, okay, any step can be done first, or do we need a workflow? It's a basic question, right? So some of these assumptions were clarified because we were doing any step, any time, but it probably made it look overwhelming. Even though any step can be done any time and it was providing flexibility, in this case, it was overwhelming the customer, right? So we decided, based on some of the interviewing, say, okay, let's do a prototype on a workflow, right? And say steps are 1, 2, and 3, and walk somebody through it. And automatically, maybe people think it's more simple because you think it's 3 steps. So it's an example of what you could do. So it's really, this is an example of the first way, which is kind of making sure you're interviewing your customer, empathizing with them, prototyping, testing the product with them, and going back, right? So it sort of gives you that nature or a method to do this for big or small features, right? So that's an example.
Perfect. We have a comment in the form of that turns into a question from Vasu. who asks about a small startup entrepreneur. Would you recommend that somebody in that situation zeroes down in on one customer segment to meet those needs and then expands the product out piecewise or stepwise from there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very generic question, and it just depends on what it is. But yes, I mean, I'm not against focus. And you may understand that this is your target market. You may launch in a country first and say, I know it's only in one language, and those are conscious choices as a startup with a budget and resources you can make. But the question is, as long as you're doing it with your eyes open, right? Even if it's now that segment and that customer, then you're thinking, what would that customer need, right? Even that customer may still need many of the non-functional aspects, which may be, they need the performance in your product, they need the simplicity in your product, they need the privacy in your product, they need the security. Some of these non-functional things you still have to think about. You can definitely target the audience in terms of the market, and you can say, I'm going for this segment or this country or this age group. I mean, it's your choice completely. But I think the point I was trying to make is that think through all the aspects, and then you can make your choices for sure. And there is always an iterative development, right? So you can also look at it that way. But upfront, thinking about sort of the customer in all these ways is a good exercise.
So Gautam has a question that asks, how does empathy go beyond just gathering customer requirements or getting an understanding of their particular use case?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess everybody will say that we're trying to build the product for the customer, right? I mean, it's not that you're not. It's like everybody would always say that, I'm trying to work with my team together. But it's we know when we work with people, and as we get into our own life product definition, we get carried away with our own notions. So you may, because we get pigeonholed. So I think the main point I'm trying to make is that keep the customer in mind, and it's not a rhetoric. It's truly sit in those shoes, right? And it may not be you are doing this role. You are one of the many customers. As a PM, you can't build the product thinking I am also one of the customers. So this makes sense for me. So I'm being empathetic, right? It is really about having that larger lens. So it is really around expanding that scope and sort of doing a little bit of prototyping, testing, understanding. Getting a you can use a study. You can get 6 people from like little bit different backgrounds who could all fall into your segment, but they're a little different, right? In terms of just what they're bringing to the table in terms of feedback. Now, again, innovation doesn't come by just listening to them. But you need to listen to what would help them. And we know Apple did that, right? It's not like somebody thought and gave them a prescription that I think I need to buy music for a song for $1.99 instead of buying a CD for $12.99. But you spoke to enough customers, you realize price is a problem, and then you figured out how to solve it. So it's not the direct use case; it's how are you able to infer things when you talk to enough people and understand their perspective. That's the big notion here.
That's a great answer. I mean, that clarifies the difference between the old style of, oh, let's send an analyst to ask about business process requirements versus understanding really what the stakeholders all need. Here's an interesting question from Fauzan, who asks, as a student, what are good ways to get hands-on experience or skills learning to build a real product development in e-commerce, for example?
Well, build a Shopify site and see if you can sell things. I mean, do it yourself. But I mean, I do think that it's again a very generic question. But today, if you want to do something in e-commerce, you can create your own storefront. You can be an entrepreneur on the side, right? That's an option for you to just learn right there. Or if you're looking at internships, you do that route. you can always work for an organization and learn. You can do it yourself. But if you are a full-time student, then, I do think that today we are in a world where you can, put up a shop quite quickly, promote it on your social media, and sort of get the whole experience, right? As an entrepreneur, as a marketeer, as a developer, as a salesperson, you can get whatever experience you want. It's a little bit easier, I think, today, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and Simplilearn has a number of certification courses if you're looking, for somebody who can, walk you through the process of learning those basics, and then you can move on, as Srishti said, to doing it in the real world. But some of our courses, you do projects that essentially do the same thing, so that when you go off to do it for real, you have had that experience in the lab. So Mohammed Irfan asks, what aspect of working as a product manager is the most exciting in your opinion?
I think, to me, there could be many, but I think it's really about building the product, right? I mean, actually getting something shippable. It's the whole journey. It's the ideation, if you're big on ideas. But I think more than even ideation, even if it was somebody's idea, to start with, if you're a PM and you're able to touch, feel something that you believe, you conceived and delivered, even better. But I think just sort of getting new functionality out there and knowing that you're solving a real problem, for me, right? It's like there's a real problem that is getting solved, and you are actually helping somebody's day, life, whatever that may be. So that is really about all products, whether it's actual products we all use day to day, software products, doesn't matter.
Yeah, that leads into the next question, by the way, from Christian, who asks, how would you compare the process of developing products for software in the virtual world versus physical products? And his particular question also focuses on promotions and advertising the product. But from the product development perspective, what do you see as the differences?
Yeah, I mean, I should be fair enough that I haven't worked on a physical product myself, right? But I do think that the flexibility that we have in software is higher than you would have in products which require manufacturing. Like, mistakes are costlier there, and so it's harder to make changes, right? So I think the testing, the prototyping, research actually probably gets done with a lot more rigor. If you're sort of launching a new shampoo, let's just say, or a new drinks product, right? I mean, there is a whole supply chain. When we're talking about software, even if we thought we had it great and it didn't work out, there's a 21.2 release, and then there's a 21.4 release, and you can release weekly, and you can release. So I think that's the biggest difference. It's an advantage where we can so quickly iterate and back out our mistakes, right? Which a lot of the physical products don't have. So the rigor is a little different in the physical products, a lot more. Right?
I can also comment from my experience that there's a stage gate process in developing physical products, because of what you said, that it's costlier and more time consuming to implement physical production. And so you have to make sure that at each step of the development that you're going in the right direction, and you don't want to keep going if you get indicators that this isn't going to work, or that it won't be accepted by the customers, or there is some production obstacle. So there's a lot of rigor that goes into, once we reach this step of the development process, let's all sit down, review, and see if we've met the criteria to move to the next step. And so that stage gate process it has to be, like you said, more rigorous for the physical product, just because of the challenges and costs involved. So hold on while Aaron asks if you could comment on sustainable product development.
And I don't know what this question means. Is it again more got to do with continuous sort of? Are you talking about sustainable in that fashion, or you think
generally he's asking about development of products that are environmentally and
so this is okay,
sustainable. Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't have experience specifically on products for sustainability, but I do feel that as I mean, I spoke about the non-functional requirements and being for tech products, like we talk about being inclusive. Similarly, as you're building physical products, we are there is a lot to talk about. Can you build it in a sustainable fashion? Today we are from the computer industry, we all are doing a lot of, like, everything is moving to the cloud, right? So when you look at everything moving to the cloud, it's a lot of energy, and that's sort of our biggest footprint, if you will, right? And that's where a lot of the data centers and how, as we're getting to the cloud, how can we manage the carbon footprint with all the big data centers we are opening is where a lot of the industry leaders, including Oracle, are now spending time and energy to figure that problem out, right? Because we know that we all are quite excited about the digital transformation and everything is moving to the cloud, but it comes with the cost of these data centers, and we all now have to figure out how can we make them greener. So that's sort of one point of view.
Yeah, a couple of things about that. There's a lovely spot in the U.S. state of Oregon, and it's up on the Columbia River. And it's a very small town that people wouldn't think of being a high-tech center, but a Google data center was built there because it's next to the Bonneville Power Dam. So there's a lot of water cooling and a lot of electrical power for running the data center. So those kinds of considerations are interesting, how they shape our world. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting about that is that the rise of Bitcoin, people didn't necessarily, you normally think of that as, oh, well, that's, completely virtual and has no real world component. But then there's the big controversy about the carbon footprint of Bitcoin mining. So it's interesting how virtual and physical overlap in that respect. We have a couple of last questions. One is from Deepak, who asks whether certification is necessary to become a product or project manager, and if so, what certifications should that person go for?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there is no product management degree as such today. Having said that, I'm actually just right now on the advisor board for UW for the product management center, right? And so there is a lot of these courses being done around how can you. It's the same thing. It's the customer. It's are you able to build a product? So people are, you could come from a degree which is technical. You could come from a degree which is marketing, commerce, MBAs, people are, it's sort of a multifaceted degree. And then you could look at things specifically if you're looking at a product manager, right? And then it is a lot of experience and building, because there is no one degree. But like I said, like in my MBA, right, we looked at strategies. It's all these different courses. Do you do product strategy? Do you look at pricing? Do you look at packaging? I mean, all these aspects. The 4 Ps is a big one for product management. So there are all of these things that you can study and train, and I'm sure Simplilearn has a bunch of courses as well. I know there are many programs which sort of help you think and be like a product manager, but there's not like one degree. It's not like engineering where if you do that you're an engineer. There is not a one standard degree saying do the degree and you're a PM after 3 years, right? So experience is a key part of being a PM eventually.
Yeah. And then related to that, Nildo asks, their team is developing a new product and they aim to provide the team members with skills regarding user experience. So are there some short courses or training programs or certifications that people can take with respect to UX and UI?
I do believe, yes. I mean, I think I don't know, Story, you guys might have some in Simplilearn as well. I know Google's doing a program now for user interface, and there are many certifications out there available where, you know, you start thinking, I mean, they're tools. One is the tool aspect, like how do you use the various tools to create
Right.
UX and visuals, but also how do you think about a problem? So these are iterative courses which give you a problem. You have to design this, design that. You can do courses. There are design courses in even college today. There's School of Designs. So definitely UX is more. It's more specific, and it's a skill which you can sort of go to school for, if you will.
And even design thinking, we have a new course at Simplilearn about that. So we're one of many alternatives out there, but yeah, there's a lot of things. If you take a look at our catalog and catalogs of other providers, you can find courses, some of them simple, some of them more rigorous, that can take you to different levels of skills development in these areas. So I think with that, we can close the questions. I want to thank everybody for asking those. And we are going to go back and do one last poll that has to do with the question of learning. So, with respect to different skills, including design thinking, what skills are the people in our audience today most interested in learning, adding to their toolkit? And part two is, when would you like to start doing that? Give about another 20 seconds. And in 3, 2, 1. Here are the results, with the greatest interest being in product development management and in business and project management, which is not surprising for this audience, but also AI and machine learning, which is perhaps a little bit surprising. So looking at when people would like to start, about a quarter of everybody says right away, which is always a good answer. If you're going to do something that takes you toward your ultimate goal, taking that first step quickly is a good plan. So with that, I am going to thank Srishti for being here. I will put her LinkedIn information into the chat. And
All right, thank you for having me here. Everybody have a great morning, evening, afternoon, based on where you are. And glad to be able to join you guys today. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, Srishti, and for the time you took with the questions. Okay. And I will just say that we have another webinar coming up next week of a different nature. This is aimed more for people involved at the corporate level with their enterprise skilling and reskilling. And this has our CEO, Krishna Kumar, as well as the managing director of one of our partner companies, Russell Kenrick, in the UK, ILX Group. So I will, again, in the chat box, place the information about that event. And if that is something that you're interested in, responsible for at your company, then happy to have you join us for that. second while I find it. I'm going to move on and say you can connect with us at Simplilearn, at Simplilearn on Facebook, Twitter, or Simplilearn on LinkedIn. We look forward to having you at future events. And this concludes the webinar. I'll keep the event open just long enough to put in the links in the chat that I talked about. But I thank everybody for being here today. And hope to see you again at future webinars and in our learning community.